The morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of Richmond, Virginia, as 16-year-old Luna Rodriguez hurried down the sidewalk with her worn canvas bag bouncing against her hip. She was already 20 minutes late for her weekend job at the downtown flower shop, and Mrs. Chen would definitely have something to say about it. Luna had been working at Bloom & Blossom for 8 months now, saving every penny she could for her college fund. Her parents worked double shifts at the textile factory just to keep their small apartment, and Luna knew that her education was her ticket to something better. She couldn't afford to lose this job, especially not over something as silly as oversleeping. As she rounded the corner onto Main Street, Luna's phone buzzed with another text from her best friend Zoe about the big party happening that weekend. All the kids from Jefferson High would be there, but Luna knew she'd be working instead. It was always the same story. While her classmates were out having fun, she was either working or studying. Sometimes she wondered if she was missing out on being a normal teenager. The morning rush hour traffic filled the air with honking horns and exhaust fumes. Luna dodged between pedestrians, clutching her bag tighter as she picked up her pace. She had exactly 3 minutes to get to the shop before Mrs. Chen would start her lecture about responsibility and punctuality. Just as she was about to cross the street, Luna spotted something that made her heart race with excitement. There, standing outside the grand entrance of the Meridian Hotel, was a small crowd of people with cameras and fancy equipment. She'd seen this before. It usually meant some celebrity or important person was staying there. Luna had always been fascinated by the lives of wealthy and famous people, not because she was starstruck, but because she was curious about how they lived so differently from her family. Her mother always said that money couldn't buy happiness, but Luna wondered if it could at least buy security and choices that her family never had. Unable to resist, she slowed her pace and tried to get a better look at what was happening. Through the crowd, she could see a tall figure in an expensive-looking dark suit, talking to what appeared to be business associates. Even from a distance, everything about the scene screamed wealth and power. Luna checked her phone again. She was now officially late, but curiosity got the better of her. She decided to take just a quick detour to see what all the fuss was about. After all, how often did she get to see real luxury up close? As she moved closer to the hotel entrance, she could see the man more clearly. He appeared to be in his early 30s with perfectly styled dark hair and an air of confidence that seemed to command respect from everyone around him. His suit looked like it cost more than her family's monthly rent, and the watch on his wrist caught the sunlight in a way that suggested it was worth a small fortune. The man was speaking in low tones to a group of people who were clearly hanging on his every word. Luna couldn't make out what he was saying, but his gestures suggested he was discussing something important. She found herself wondering what it would be like to have that kind of presence, to walk into a room and have everyone pay attention to you. Luna was so absorbed in watching the scene that she didn't notice the hotel's revolving door spinning behind her. A woman in an elegant cream-colored coat emerged, walking briskly while talking on her phone. The woman's large designer handbag swung wide as she gestured during her conversation. Everything happened in slow motion after that. The bag caught Luna right in the shoulder, sending her stumbling forward just as the wealthy man was turning to head back toward the hotel entrance. Luna tried to catch herself, reaching out instinctively to steady her balance. Her fingers caught the edge of his jacket, a beautiful charcoal gray blazer that looked like it belonged in a magazine. She felt the fabric give way under her grip and heard the unmistakable sound of tearing material. Time seemed to freeze. Luna looked down in horror at the piece of expensive fabric still clutched in her hand. A clean tear ran along the seam of the jacket's side panel, completely ruining what was obviously a very costly piece of clothing. The man turned slowly, his eyes moving from Luna's shocked face down to the damaged jacket. His expression was unreadable, but Luna could feel the weight of his gaze. The crowd around them fell silent, and she became acutely aware that everyone was staring at her. "I'm so sorry," Luna whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't mean to. Someone bumped into me and I lost my balance." She held out the torn piece of fabric as if returning it might somehow undo the damage. The man's companions looked equally shocked. One of them, a stern-looking woman with silver hair, stepped forward with a disapproving frown. "Do you have any idea how much that jacket costs?" she asked sharply. Luna shook her head, afraid to speak. She could feel her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Her canvas bag suddenly felt cheap and shabby compared to the leather briefcases and designer purses surrounding her. "That's a custom Armani," another man in the group muttered. "Probably worth more than most people make in 6 months. Luna felt sick to her stomach. 6 months of her wages wouldn't even come close to paying for something like that. She thought about her parents working so hard just to make ends meet. How could she possibly explain this to them? The wealthy man still hadn't spoken. He was studying Luna with an intensity that made her feel like he was looking right through her. She wanted to disappear, to wake up and find out this was all just a terrible dream. "I'll pay for it," Luna said desperately, though she had no idea how. "I promise I'll find a way to pay you back. I have a job and I can work extra hours. Or take on more jobs, or—" Her voice trailed off as she realized how impossible it sounded. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic and the clicking of cameras from tourists who had started to notice the commotion. Luna wished the ground would open up and swallow her whole. Then, to everyone's surprise, the man smiled. The smile that spread across the man's face was not what Luna had expected at all. It wasn't angry or mocking. Instead, it seemed almost amused, as if he found the entire situation genuinely interesting rather than infuriating. "Well," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent that Luna couldn't quite place, "that's certainly not something that happens to me every day." He looked down at his torn jacket with what appeared to be curiosity rather than anger. His companions, however, did not share his calm reaction. The silver-haired woman stepped closer to Luna, her eyes flashing with irritation. "This is completely unacceptable," she said firmly. "We have meetings all morning, and now Anthony looks like he's been in some kind of accident. So his name was Anthony." Luna filed this information away while still trying to process his unexpectedly pleasant reaction. She had prepared herself for yelling, demands for money she didn't have, maybe even threats to call the police. This calm response was somehow more unsettling than anger would have been. "Mrs. Patterson," Anthony said to the silver-haired woman, "it's just a jacket. I have others." He turned his attention back to Luna, who was still clutching the torn piece of fabric like it might somehow reattach itself. "You said someone bumped into you?" Luna nodded quickly, grateful that he seemed to understand it was an accident. "Yes, a lady with a big bag came out of the hotel and knocked into me. I was just trying to catch my balance and I grabbed onto—" She gestured helplessly at his jacket. Anthony looked around until he spotted the woman in the cream coat, who was now halfway down the block, still talking animatedly on her phone, completely unaware of the chaos she had caused. "Ah, I see," Anthony said thoughtfully. "So you're the victim here as much as I am." He paused, studying Luna with those sharp eyes again. "You mentioned you have a job. What kind of work do you do?" "I work at a flower shop," Luna said, suddenly remembering that she was now very late. "Actually, I should probably get going. My boss is going to be really upset that I'm late, and if I lose this job—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The thought of disappointing her parents and losing the money she needed for college was almost too much to bear. "A flower shop," Anthony repeated, as if this was the most fascinating thing he'd heard all day. "And you're saving money for college?" Luna blinked in surprise. She hadn't mentioned college, had she? Then she realized she must have said something about her college fund when she was frantically apologizing. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I'm trying to save up so I can go to Virginia Tech next year. I want to study business." Something shifted in Anthony's expression when she mentioned business school. Mrs. Patterson and the other men in suits were clearly getting impatient, checking their watches and whispering among themselves about rescheduling meetings. "Anthony," Mrs. Patterson said sharply, "we really need to get you changed and to the conference room. The board members are expecting you in 15 minutes. But Anthony seemed in no hurry. He was still focused on Luna, as if she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "What's your name?" he asked. "Luna Rodriguez," she replied, then immediately wondered if she should have given her real name to a stranger. But there was something about his manner that made her feel like she could trust him. "Luna," he repeated, and somehow the way he said it made her ordinary name sound important. "Tell me, Luna, what do you know about business? What kind of business do you want to go into?" This was definitely not the conversation Luna had expected to be having on a busy street corner after ruining a stranger's expensive clothing. But something about Anthony's genuine interest made her want to answer honestly. "I want to help people who don't have much money make better financial decisions," she said, My parents work so hard, but they never learned about saving or investing or any of that stuff. I want to learn how money really works so I can help families like mine." Anthony's eyebrows rose slightly, and Luna caught a quick exchange of glances between him and Mrs. Patterson. She wondered if she had said something wrong. "That's a noble goal," Anthony said after a moment. "And you're working at a flower shop to pay for this education?" "Among other things," Luna admitted. "I also tutor kids after school and help my neighbor with her computer problems on weekends. Basically, I'll do any honest work I can find." The group around Anthony was growing more restless by the minute. Luna could see other well-dressed people starting to gather near the hotel entrance, checking their phones and looking expectant. Whatever Anthony was supposed to be doing, it was clearly important, and she was keeping him from it. "Look," Luna said, taking a step back, "I can see you have important things to do and I'm already super late for work. Can I please get your contact information so I can figure out how to pay you back for the jacket? I know it's going to take me a while, but I promise I'm good for it." Anthony studied her for another long moment, then did something that surprised everyone, including his companions. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, but instead of handing it to Luna, he flipped it over and wrote something on the back. "Luna," he said, holding out the card, "I have a proposition for you. But first, you need to get to work before you lose your job. We can't have that, can we?" Luna took the card with trembling fingers. The front had elegant lettering that read Anthony Chen, CEO, Meridian Holdings Group. Her eyes widened as she realized she had just destroyed the jacket of what appeared to be a very important businessman. She flipped the card over and saw an address written in neat handwriting, along with a time, Saturday 2 p.m. "What kind of proposition?" Luna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anthony's smile grew wider, and for the first time since this whole incident began, Luna saw something that looked almost mischievous in his expression. "The kind that might just change your life," he said. "But only if you're brave enough to show up." Before Luna could ask any more questions, Anthony turned to his group. "Mrs. Patterson, please call my tailor and have him bring a selection of jackets to the office. And cancel my first meeting. I need a few extra minutes to think about something." As the group began to move toward the hotel entrance, Anthony looked back at Luna one more time. "Don't forget," he called out. "Saturday at 2, and Luna, bring your questions about business. You're going to need them." With that, he disappeared into the hotel lobby, leaving Luna standing on the sidewalk with a business card in her hand and absolutely no idea what had just happened to her life. Luna stood on the sidewalk for a full minute after Anthony disappeared into the hotel, staring at the business card in her hand like it might suddenly burst into flames. The morning rush continued around her, people brushing past as they hurried to their own jobs and responsibilities, completely unaware that her world had just been turned upside down. Meridian Holdings Group. She'd never heard of it. But the card felt expensive between her fingers, thick, creamy paper with raised lettering that probably cost more to print than she made in a day. And Anthony Chen was the CEO. She had destroyed the jacket of a CEO. Her phone buzzed urgently, snapping her back to reality. 3 missed calls from Mrs. Chen at the flower shop. Luna's stomach dropped as she realized she was now 35 minutes late. She shoved the business card into her bag and ran the remaining 4 blocks to Bloom and Blossom, her heart pounding from both the sprint and the lingering shock of her encounter. Mrs. Chen was waiting behind the counter when Luna burst through the shop door, surrounded by the familiar scent of roses and baby's breath. The older woman's expression was a mixture of concern and irritation that Luna had come to know well over the past 8 months. "Luna, what happened? You never call, you never text, and then you show up looking like you've seen a ghost," Mrs. Chen said, setting down her cup of tea. "Are you sick? Is your family okay?" "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen," Luna panted, still catching her breath. "Something really weird happened on my way here, and She trailed off, realizing how impossible it would sound if she tried to explain. Mrs. Chen studied Luna's face carefully. Despite her stern exterior, she had become something of a motherly figure to Luna over the months, always making sure she ate lunch and never scheduled her during important school events. "Sit down," Mrs. Chen said, pointing to the small stool behind the counter. "Tell me what happened, and don't say nothing because I can see it's something big." Luna sank onto the stool and found herself telling Mrs. Chen the entire story: the rush to work, the crowd at the hotel, the accidental collision, and the mysterious business card. As she spoke, she pulled the card from her bag and showed it to her boss. Mrs. Chen examined the card with the same intensity she used when checking flower arrangements for imperfections. Her eyebrows rose higher with each passing second. "Luna," she said slowly. "Do you know who Anthony Chen is?" Luna shook her head. "Should I?" Mrs. Chen reached for her phone and quickly typed something into the search engine. Within seconds, she was showing Luna a news article with a photo of Anthony standing in front of a gleaming office building. Anthony Chen, 32 years old, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. Mrs. Chen read aloud. Started his first company when he was 19, sold it for $50 million by the time he was 25. Now his company, Meridian Holdings Group, has investments in everything from technology to real estate to green energy. Luna felt dizzy. A billionaire. She had torn the jacket of an actual billionaire. And somehow, instead of having her arrested or demanding impossible amounts of money, he had given her a business card and asked her to meet him on Saturday. "This is insane," Luna whispered. "What could he possibly want with me?" Mrs. Chen continued scrolling through articles. "It says here he's known for being unconventional in his business methods. He's funded several programs for underprivileged students and has a reputation for finding talented people in unexpected places." She looked up at Luna with new interest. "What exactly did you two talk about?" Luna recounted the conversation as best she could remember, including her mention of wanting to study business and help families with financial planning. Mrs. Chen listened intently, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. "Luna," Mrs. Chen said when she finished, "I think this man might be offering you an opportunity. But you need to be very careful. The world of the ultra-wealthy is nothing like what you and I know. People at that level don't do anything without a reason." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Luna tried to focus on arranging flowers and helping customers, but her mind kept wandering back to the encounter. During her lunch break, she Googled everything she could find about Anthony Chen and Meridian Holdings Group. The articles painted a picture of a brilliant but enigmatic businessman who had built his fortune through a combination of shrewd investments and innovative thinking. He was known for his philanthropy, but also for being intensely private about his personal life. Several articles mentioned his unconventional hiring practices and his belief in finding talent in unexpected places. One article from a business magazine caught her attention. It was titled, "The Billionaire Who Believes in Second Chances," and detailed how Anthony had launched several programs to help young people from disadvantaged backgrounds start their own businesses. The article mentioned his own humble beginnings as the son of immigrants who had worked multiple jobs to support their family. Luna felt a flutter of recognition. Maybe that was why he had seemed so interested in her story about wanting to help families like hers. Maybe he understood what it was like to come from nothing and dream of something more. That evening, Luna sat at the small kitchen table in her family's apartment, homework spread out in front of her, but unable to concentrate on calculus problems. Her parents were working the night shift again, so she had the place to herself. The business card sat next to her textbook, seeming to mock her with its elegance. She picked up her phone and called her best friend Zoe, who answered on the second ring with her usual enthusiasm. "Luna, perfect timing. I was just about to call you about the party this weekend. You have to come. Tyler's older brother is going to be there, and you know he's had a crush on you since forever." "Zoe," Luna interrupted, "I need to tell you something crazy that happened today." She repeated the story for the third time that day, and Zoe's reactions were exactly what Luna had expected. Gasps of disbelief, demands for more details, and finally, an explosion of excitement. "Luna Rodriguez, are you kidding me right now? A billionaire wants to meet with you? This is like something out of a movie. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't even know if I should go," Luna said. "What if it's some kind of joke? What if he's planning to make me pay for the jacket and this is just his way of humiliating me?" "Or," Zoe said dramatically, "what if he's looking for a protege? What if he wants to mentor you or offer you a scholarship or give you a job? Luna, you can't not go. This could be the break you've been waiting for." Luna stared at the card again. Saturday at 2 p.m. The address was in the downtown business district, probably in one of those glass towers she'd always admired from a distance but never had reason to enter. "But what would I even say to him?" Luna asked. "I'm just a 16-year-old girl who works in a flower shop. What could I possibly have that someone like him would want? Maybe that's exactly what he's looking for, Zoe said thoughtfully. Someone real. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle. You're one of the smartest people I know, Luna. And you work harder than anyone. Maybe he sees that. After they hung up, Luna sat in the quiet apartment weighing her options. She could ignore the card, pretend the whole thing never happened, and go back to her normal life of work and school and saving every penny for college. It would be safe, predictable. Or she could show up on Saturday and find out what Anthony Chen, billionaire businessman, wanted with Luna Rodriguez, flower shop employee and aspiring college student. As she looked around the small apartment with its second-hand furniture and her parents' work uniforms hanging by the door, Luna made her decision. Whatever Anthony wanted, whatever this was about, she had to know. She'd spent her whole life playing it safe, and where had it gotten her? Still struggling, still worried about money. Still wondering if she'd ever have the opportunities that other kids took for granted. Maybe it was time to take a chance. Saturday afternoon arrived faster than Luna had expected. She stood in front of her tiny bedroom mirror, trying on the third outfit of the day. Her wardrobe wasn't exactly designed for meetings with billionaires. She'd settled on her one good pair of dark jeans, a white button-down shirt she usually saved for job interviews, and the black flats her aunt had given her for her birthday. Her parents had left for their weekend shift at the factory an hour earlier, but not before her mother noticed Luna's unusual nervousness. "Mia, you've been acting strange all week," her mother had said, adjusting Luna's collar with gentle hands. "Are you sure everything is okay?" Luna had simply told them she was meeting someone about a potential scholarship opportunity, which wasn't exactly a lie. She still had no idea what Anthony wanted, but it could be related to education, she hoped. Now standing outside the gleaming 40-story Meridian Tower, Luna felt like she was about to walk into another world. The building's glass facade reflected the afternoon sun, making it look like it was made of diamonds. People in expensive suits moved in and out of the revolving doors with the confidence of those who belonged in such places. Luna checked her phone. 1:58 p.m. She was 2 minutes early, which felt like a small victory. Taking a deep breath, she walked through the revolving door and into the most luxurious lobby she'd ever seen. The marble floors were so polished she could see her reflection, and a massive chandelier hung from the soaring ceiling like something from a palace. A fountain in the center of the space created a gentle bubbling sound that somehow made the entire space feel calmer. Luna approached the reception desk, where a perfectly groomed woman in a navy suit looked up with a professional smile. "I'm here to see Anthony Chen," Luna said, her voice coming out smaller than she'd intended. "I have an appointment at 2 o'clock. My name is Luna Rodriguez." The receptionist's fingers flew across her keyboard, and her eyebrows rose slightly when she found Luna's name on the schedule. "Of course, Miss Rodriguez, Mr. Chen is expecting you. Please take the express elevator to the 38th floor. Someone will meet you there." Luna's hands were trembling slightly as she pressed the button for the 38th floor. The elevator was so smooth and quiet that she barely felt it moving. But the floor numbers climbing on the digital display reminded her how high she was going, both literally and figuratively. When the doors opened, Luna found herself face to face with Mrs. Patterson, the silver-haired woman from the hotel incident. Today she seemed much less stern and more curious. "Miss Rodriguez," Mrs. Patterson said with a slight smile. "Right on time. Mr. Chen appreciates punctuality. Please follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the city. Luna could see the flower shop where she worked, just a tiny speck in the urban landscape below. The contrast wasn't lost on her. Mrs. Patterson stopped at a set of double doors made of rich dark wood. "Before we go in," she said, turning to Luna, "I want you to know that what Mr. Chen is about to propose to you is quite unusual. He's been thinking about it all week, and frankly, it's not something I would have recommended, but he has good instincts about people." Luna's heart was beating so fast she was sure Mrs. Patterson could hear it. "What kind of proposal?" "You'll see," Mrs. Patterson said, knocking twice on the door before opening it. The office beyond was larger than Luna's entire apartment. One wall was entirely windows, offering a panoramic view of the city. Anthony stood behind a massive desk made of the same dark wood as the doors, but when he saw Luna, he came around to greet her. He was wearing a different suit today, navy blue instead of the charcoal gray she'd destroyed. but he had the same confident presence that had impressed her at the hotel. What surprised her, though, was that he seemed almost as nervous as she felt. "Luna," he said, extending his hand for a shake. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "To be honest, I almost didn't," Luna replied, accepting his handshake. His grip was firm but not overwhelming, and she was grateful that he didn't seem to be trying to intimidate her. "Please sit down," Anthony said, gesturing to a comfortable seating area near the windows. "Can I get you anything? Water, coffee, tea?" "Water would be great," Luna said, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than her family's monthly grocery budget. Anthony poured water from an elegant glass pitcher into a crystal tumbler and handed it to her before taking the chair across from her. For a moment they sat in silence, and Luna was struck by how different this felt from their brief encounter on the street. Here, in his element, Anthony seemed more human somehow. "I've been thinking about our conversation all week," Anthony began. "About what you said about wanting to help families with financial planning, about working multiple jobs to save for college, about your goals and your determination." Luna nodded, not trusting herself to speak yet. "I did some research on you," Anthony continued, and Luna's eyes widened in alarm. "Nothing invasive," he added quickly. "Just publicly available information. Your grades, your work history, recommendations from teachers and employers, including Mrs. Chen." "You talked to Mrs. Chen?" Luna asked, surprised. "I did. She had very interesting things to say about you. Your work ethic, your integrity, your way with customers. She mentioned that you often help customers choose arrangements they can actually afford, even when you could easily sell them something more expensive." Luna felt heat rise in her cheeks. "That just seems like the right thing to do." "Exactly," Anthony said, leaning forward slightly. "That's exactly the kind of thinking I'm looking for." "Looking for?" Luna repeated. Anthony stood up and walked to his desk, returning with a folder. "Luna, what I'm about to offer you is going to sound crazy. I want you to hear me out completely before you say anything." Luna gripped her water glass tighter and nodded. "I'm starting a new division within Meridian Holdings," Anthony explained. "It's focused on financial literacy and accessible banking services for working-class families, the kind of families that traditional banks often ignore or take advantage of. I need someone to help me understand what those families really need, someone who's lived that experience." Luna's mind was racing. "But I don't know anything about banking or finance beyond basic stuff." "That's exactly why I need you," Anthony said. "I have plenty of advisors who understand finance from an academic or professional perspective. What I don't have is someone who understands what it's like to choose between paying for groceries or saving for college. Someone who knows what it feels like to work 3 jobs and still worry about money." Anthony opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "I'm offering you a position as a junior consultant for this new division. You would work with our team to develop services and products that actually serve working families instead of exploiting them. The position comes with full college tuition support, a salary that would allow you to help your family, and the opportunity to learn business from the ground up." Luna stared at the papers in front of her, her brain struggling to process what she was hearing. "I don't understand. Why me?" "You could find college students with business degrees, people who already know this stuff." Anthony smiled, and this time it was the same amused expression she'd seen at the hotel. "Because sometimes the best perspective comes from someone who's never been told what's impossible, and because when you tore my jacket, you didn't make excuses or try to run away. You immediately took responsibility and offered to make it right, even though you knew it would be difficult for you financially." He paused, looking out at the city below. "I built my first company because I saw a problem that everyone else said was just the way things are. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see what insiders miss." Luna looked at the documents again. The salary figure made her dizzy. It was more than her parents made combined. The college fund provision would cover not just tuition but room and board at any school she could get into. "This is really happening," she whispered. "If you want it to be," Anthony replied. "But I need to know that you're serious about this. This isn't charity, Luna. This is a business opportunity that could benefit thousands of families like yours, but only if you're willing to work harder than you've ever worked before." Luna thought about her parents coming home exhausted every night from jobs that barely paid enough to survive. She thought about Mrs. Chen, who had worked 7 days a week for 20 years to build her small business. She thought about all the families in her neighborhood who struggled with the same financial challenges her own family faced. Then she looked at Anthony, this billionaire who somehow saw potential in a girl who worked at a flower shop, and she made the second life-changing decision of the week. When do I start? 6 months later, Luna stood in front of a conference room full of banking executives, holding a tablet displaying charts and graphs that represented something much more important than numbers. They represented real families and real lives, EI. Current overdraft system charges our target demographic an average of $300 per year in fees, Luna explained, her voice steady and confident despite the intimidating audience. That's money that could go toward groceries, school supplies, or emergency savings. Our proposed alternative would eliminate those fees while still protecting the bank's interests. Anthony sat at the head of the conference table, watching Luna present the findings from their pilot program with obvious pride. The nervous 16-year-old who had stumbled into his life that morning outside the hotel had grown into a poised young woman who spoke about financial policy with the passion of someone who truly understood its impact. The transition hadn't been easy. Luna's first few weeks at Meridian Holdings had been overwhelming. She'd felt like she was drowning in business terminology, financial regulations, and corporate protocols that seemed designed to exclude people like her. There were days when she'd sit in meetings where everyone else spoke in acronyms and industry jargon, wondering if Anthony had made a terrible mistake. But gradually, Luna found her voice. She realized that her lack of formal business education wasn't a weakness. It was exactly what made her valuable. When the banking team proposed products that sounded great on paper, but would be impossible for working families to actually use, Luna was there to explain why. When they designed interfaces that required college-level reading comprehension, Luna suggested simpler alternatives that her neighbors could navigate. The breakthrough came during her 3rd month, when Luna convinced Anthony to let her conduct focus groups in her own neighborhood. Instead of bringing families to the gleaming Meridian offices, Luna set up meetings in community centers and local libraries, places where people felt comfortable speaking honestly. What they learned revolutionized the entire project. Families didn't want complicated investment products or high-tech banking apps with dozens of features. They wanted simple, transparent services that helped them save money and avoid predatory fees. They wanted to be treated with respect instead of suspicion. They wanted banking that worked with their lives instead of against them. The pilot program has been running for 4 months now. Luna continued her presentation, clicking to the next slide. We've served over 2,000 families, and the results speak for themselves. Customer satisfaction is at 93%, which is 20 points higher than the industry average. More importantly, the average family in our program has reduced their annual banking fees by 68%. One of the executives, a stern-looking man who had been skeptical of the project from the beginning, raised his hand. These numbers are impressive, but what about profitability? We can't run a charity operation. Luna had expected this question. 6 months ago, it would have made her nervous. Now, she smiled confidently. Actually, the program is already profitable, she said, clicking to a financial summary. By reducing overhead costs and streamlining our services, we're able to maintain healthy margins while passing savings on to customers. Plus, customer retention in this program is 40% higher than our traditional accounts. People stay with banks that treat them fairly. Anthony caught Luna's eye and nodded approvingly. They had spent countless hours working through these numbers, and Luna had insisted on including the profitability analysis. She understood that good intentions weren't enough in business. The program had to work financially for everyone involved. After the meeting, Luna walked back to her office, where still hard to believe she had an office, feeling energized by the positive response from the executives. Her space was smaller than Anthony's, of course, but it had a window overlooking the city and room for all the community feedback forms and customer stories that filled her days. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Mija, Mrs. Gonzalez wants to know if you can help her understand that banking thing you told us about. She's interested. Luna smiled as she typed back. Tell her to come to the community meeting Tuesday night. I'll explain everything. These community meetings had become one of Luna's favorite parts of her job. Every Tuesday evening, she held informal sessions at the local community center, explaining financial concepts in simple terms and helping people understand their options. What had started as a few neighbors asking questions had grown into standing room-only sessions with people coming from across the city. The program's success had caught the attention of other companies and organizations. Luna had been invited to speak at conferences, and there was talk of expanding the program to other cities. Sometimes she felt like she was living someone else's life. A year ago, she'd been worried about saving enough money for college applications, and now she was being asked to advise other banks on serving working-class communities. But the moment that made everything real was when Mrs. Chen from the flower shop became one of their first business clients. The program had expanded to include small business banking, and Luna had personally helped Mrs. Chen refinance her shop's loan and set up a retirement savings account. "You know," Mrs. Chen had said during their meeting, "when you told me about tearing that man's jacket, I thought you were going to be in terrible trouble. I never imagined it would lead to all this." Luna often thought about that morning too. If the woman with the cream coat hadn't bumped into her, if she hadn't been curious about the crowd at the hotel, if she'd been too scared to show up for the Saturday meeting, her entire life would be different. As she packed up her things that evening, Luna's phone rang. Anthony's name appeared on the screen. "Great presentation today," he said when she answered. "The board approved the expansion to 3 more cities. We'll need to start hiring additional team members." "That's incredible," Luna said, genuinely excited. "I have some ideas about who we should look for." "I'm sure you do," Anthony replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I wanted to ask you something else, though. Have you given any more thought to college?" This was a conversation they'd been having more frequently lately. Luna's original plan had been to attend Virginia Tech, but her role at Meridian had opened up opportunities at business schools she'd never dreamed of considering. Anthony had connections everywhere, and several prestigious programs had already expressed interest in Luna, based on her work with the Financial Literacy Project. "I think I want to stay here and keep building this program," Luna said, "at least for another year or 2. There's still so much work to do, and I feel like I'm learning more here than I would in any classroom." "That's fine," Anthony said, "but don't close any doors. The colleges will wait for someone with your track record, and who knows, maybe someday you'll want to start your own company." After they hung up, Luna stood at her office window, looking down at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the early evening darkness. Somewhere down there, families were making the same difficult financial decisions her parents had struggled with for years. But now, thanks to the program she'd helped create, some of those families had better options. She thought about the customer letter she'd received that morning from a single mother who had been able to buy her daughter a winter coat without worrying about overdraft fees. She thought about the small business owner who had expanded his restaurant thanks to their streamlined loan process. She thought about all the people who no longer had to choose between paying bills and saving for their children's futures. A year ago, Luna Rodriguez had been a girl who worked at a flower shop and dreamed of someday making a difference. Today, she was a young woman who was actually making that difference, one family at a time. As she gathered her things and headed toward the elevator, Luna caught her reflection in the polished doors. She looked older, more confident, but she hadn't lost the determination that had driven her to work multiple jobs and save every penny for college. She'd just found a bigger stage for that determination. The elevator descended toward the lobby, where her parents would be waiting to pick her up. They still worked at the FAC,